Everyone, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to see if I can load up my favorite um, screen. Mm. Okay, here we go again. Okay, we are on page 888. In the middle of the black gate opens. Chapter 10. The black gate opens. Out of the Return of the King, Extended Edition, Book 5 by JRR Tolkien. And again, I'll be starting in. Let's see, which one? I'm going to go ahead and do it at the top. 888. Okay, so then some, being shamed by his mercy, overcame their fear and went on. And the others took new hope, hearing of a manful deed within their measure that they could turn to. And they departed. And so, since many men had already been left at the crossroads, it was with less than 6,000 that the captains of the West came at last to challenge the Black Gate and the might of Mordor. They advance now. Oh, Jesus. Okay. And the others took new hope, hearing of a manful deed within their measure that they could turn to, and they departed. And so, since many men had already been left at the crossroads, it was with less than 6,000 that the captains of the West came at last to challenge the Black Gate and the might of Mordor. They advanced now slowly, expecting at every hour some answer to their challenge, and they drew together, since it was but waste of men to send out scouts or small parties from the main host. At nightfall of the 5th day of the march from Morgul Vale, they made their last camp and set fires about it of such dead wood and heath as they could find. They passed the hours of night in wakefulness, and they were aware of many things have seen that walked and prowled all about them, and they heard the howling of wolves. The wind had died, and all the air seemed still. They could see little, for though it was cloudless and waxing moon was 4 nights old, and there were smokes and fumes that rose out of the earth, and the white crescent was shrouded in the mist of Mordor. It grew cold. As morning came, the wind began to stir again. But now it came from the north, and soon it freshened to a rising breeze. All the night walkers were gone, and the land seemed empty. North, amid their noisome pits, lay the first of the great heaps of hills of slag and broken rock and blasted earth, the vomit of the maggot folk of Mordor. But south and now, near loomed the great rampart of Sarith Gorger, and the black gate at midmost, and the two towers of the teeth, tall and dark, upon either side. For in their last march the captains had turned away from the old road as it bent east, and avoided the peril of the lurking hills. And so now they were approaching the Morannon from the northwest, even as Frodo had done. The two vast iron doors of the black gate, under its frowning arch, were fast closed. Upon the battlement nothing could be seen. All was silent, but watchful. They were come to the last end of the folly, and stood forlorn and chill in the gray light of early day, before towers and walls which their army could not assault with hope, not even if it had brought thither engines of great power. And the enemy had no more force than would suffice for the manning of the gate and wall alone. Yet they knew that all the hills and rocks about the Moran were filled with hidden foes, and the shadowy defile beyond was bored and tunneled by teeming broods of evil things. And as they stood, they saw all the Nazgul gathered together, hovering above the towers of the teeth like vultures, and they knew that they were watched. But still the enemy made no sign. No choice was left them but to play their part to its end. Therefore, Aragorn now set the host in such array as could best be contrived, and they were drawn up on two great hills of blasted stone and earth that orcs had piled in years in labor. Before them, towards Mordor, lay like a great mire of reeking mud and foul-smelling pools. When all was ordered, the captains rode forth towards the black gate with a great guard of horsemen, and the banner, and heralds, and trumpeters. There was Gandalf as chief herald, and Aragorn with the sons of Elrond and Eomer of Rohan, and Imrahil, and Legolas and Gimli, and Peregrine were bidden to go also, so that all the enemies of Mordor should have a witness. They came within the cry of the Morannon, and unfurled the banner, and blew upon the trumpets, and the heralds stood out, and sent their voices over the battlement of Mordor. Come forth, they cried. Let the Lord of the Black Land come forth. Justice shall be done upon him. For wrongfully he has made war upon Gondor and wrested its lands. Therefore, the king of Gondor demands that he should atone for his evils and depart then forever. Come forth. There was a long silence, and from wall and gate no cry or sound was heard in answer. For Sauron already laid his plans, and he had a mind first to play these minds cruelly before they struck to kill. So it was that, even as the captains were about to turn away, the silence was broken suddenly, and there came a long rolling of great drums, like thunder in the mountains, and then a braying of horns that shook the very stones and stunned men's ears. And thereupon the door of the black gate was thrown open with a great clang, and out of it there came an embassy from the dark tower. At its head there rode a tall and evil shape, mounted upon a black horse. A horse it was, for it was huge and hideous, and his face was a frightful mask, more than a skull, like a skull than a living head. And in the sockets of its eyes and its nostrils there burned a flame. The rider was robed all in black, and black was his lofty helm. Yet this was a ringwraith, but a living man. The lieutenant of the Tower of Barad he was, and his name is remembered in no tale. For he himself had forgotten it, and said, I am the mouth of Sauron, but it is told that he was a renegade, the king of the race of those that are named the Black Numeronians, where they established their dwellings in Middle Earth during the years of Sauron's domination, and they worshipped him, being enamored of evil knowledge. And he entered the service of the Dark Tower when it first rose again. And because of his cunning, he grew ever higher in the Lord's favor, and he learned great sorcery and knew much of the mind of Sauron, and he was more cruel than any orc. He it was that now rode out, and with him came only a small company of black harnessed soldiery, and a single banner, black, but bearing on it in red the evil eye. Now, halting a few paces before the captains of the West, he looked them up and down and laughed. Is there anyone in this route with authority to treat with me? He asked, or indeed with wit to understand me? Not thou at least. He mocked, turning to Aragorn with scorn. It needs more to make a king than a piece of elfish glass, or a ramble such as this. Why, any brigade of the hills could show as good a following. Aragorn said not in answer, but he took the other's eye and held it, and for a moment they strove thus. But soon, though Aragorn did not stir nor move hand to weapon, the other quailed and gave back as if menaced with a blow. I am a herald and ambassador, and may not be assailed, cried. Where such laws hold, said Gandalf, it is also the custom for ambassadors to use less insolence. But no one has threatened you. You have not to fear from us until your errand is done. But unless your master has come to new wisdom, and then with all servants, you will be in great peril. So, said the messenger, then thou art the spokesman, old gray beard. Have we not heard of thee a whiles, and of thy wanderings, ever hatching plots and mischief at a safe distance? But this time thou hast stuck out thy nose too far, Master Gandalf, and thou shalt see what comes to him who sets his foolish webs before the feet of Sauron the Great. I have tokens that I was bidden to show to thee in especial, if thou shouldst dare to come. He signed to one of his guards, and he came forward, bearing a bundle swathed in black cloth. The messenger put these aside, and there, to the wonder and dismay of all the captains, he held at first the short sword that Sam had carried, and next the great cloak with a elfin brooch, and last the coat of mithril mail that Frodo had worn wrapped in tattered garments. A blackness came before their eyes, and it seemed to them in a moment of silence that the world stood still, but their hearts were dead, and their last hope gone. Pippin, who stood behind Prince Amarhill, sprang forward with a cry of grief. Silence, said Gandalf, sternly thrusting him back, but the messenger laughed aloud. So you have yet another of these imps with you, he cried. What use you find in them I cannot guess, but to send them as spies unto Mordor is beyond even your accustomed folly. Still, I thank him, for it is plain that this brat, at least, has seen these tokens before, and it would be vain for you to deny them now. I do not wish to deny them, said Gandalf. Indeed, I know them all, and all their history. And despite your scorn, foul mouth of Sauron, I cannot say as much. But why do you bring them here? Dwarf coats, elf coat, blade of the fallen west, and spy from the little rat land of the Shire. Nay, do not start. We know it well. Here are the marks of a conspiracy. Now, maybe he that bore these things was a creature that you would not grieve to lose, and maybe otherwise one dear to you, perhaps. If so, take swift counsel with what little wit is left to you, for Sauron does not love spies, and what his fate shall be, depends on now on your choice. No one answered him, but he now saw their faces bright with fear, and the horror in their eyes, and he laughed again, for it seemed to him that his sport went well. Good, good, he said. He was dear to you, I see, or else his errand was one that you did not wish to fail. It has, and now he shall endure the slow torment of years, as long and slow as our arts in the great tower can contrive, and never be released, unless, maybe, when he is changed and broken, so that he may come to you, and you shall see what you have done. This shall surely be unless you accept my Lord's terms. Name the terms, said Gandalf steadily. But those nearby saw the anguish in her face, and now he seemed an old and wizened man, crushed, defeated at last. They did not doubt that he would accept. These are the terms, said the messenger, and smiled as he eyed them one by one. The rabble of Gondor and its deluded allies shall withdraw at once beyond the Anduin, first taking oaths never again to assail Sauron the Great in arms, open or secret. All lands east of the Anduin shall be Sauron's forever solely. West of the Anduin, as far as the Misty Mountains and the Gap of Rohan, shall be tributary to Mordor. And men there shall bear no weapons, but shall have leave to govern their own affairs. But they shall help to rebuild Isengard, which they have wantonly destroyed, and that shall be Sauron's. And there his lieutenant shall dwell, not Saruman, but one more worthy of trust. Looking in the messenger's eyes, they read his thought. He wants to be that lieutenant, and gather all that remained of the West under his sway, for he would be their tyrant, and they his slaves. But Gandalf said, this is much to demand for the delivery of one servant, that your master should receive in exchange what he must else fight many a war to gain. Or has the field of Gondor destroyed his hope in war, so that he falls to haggling? And if indeed we rated this prisoner so high, what surety have we that Sauron, the base master of treasury, will keep his part? Where is his prisoner? Let him be brought forth and yielded to us, and then we shall consider his demands. It seemed then to Gandalf, intent, watching him as a man engaged in fencing with a deadly foe. For the taking of a breath, the messenger was at loss, yet swiftly he laughed again. Do not bandy words in your insolence with the mouth of Sauron, he cried. Surety you crave. Sauron gives none. If you sue for his clemency, you must first do his bidding. These are his terms. Take them or leave them. These we will take, said Gandalf suddenly. He cast aside his cloak, and white light shone forth like a sword in that black place. Before his upraised hand, the foul messenger recoiled, and Gandalf, coming, seized and took from him the token, coat, cloak, and sword. These we will take in memory of our friend, he cried. But as for your terms, we reject them utterly. You get you gone, for your embassy is over and death is near to you. We did not come here to waste words entreating with Sauron, faithless and accursed, still less with one of his slaves. Be gone. Then the messenger Mordor laughed no more. His face was twisted with amazement and anger to the likeness of some wild beast that, as it crouches on its prey, is smitten on the muzzle with a stinging rod. Rage filled him, and his mouth slavered, and shapeless sounds of fury came strangling from his throat. But he looked at the fell faces of the captains and their deadly eyes, and fear overcame his wrath. He gave a great cry and turned, and leaped upon his steed, and with his company galloped madly back to the Cirith Gordon. But as they went, his soldiers blew their horns and signaled, long arranged, and even before they came to the gate, Sauron sprang his trap. Drums rolled and fires lit up. The great doors of the black gate swung back wide. Out of it streamed a great host as swiftly as swirling waters when a sluice is lifted. The captains mounted again and rode back, and from the host of Mordor there went up a jeering yell. Dust rose smothering the air as from nearby there marched up an army of Easterlings and that had waited for the signal. In the shadows, Arid was dwelling. Beyond his further tower, down from the hills on either side of the Meridian, poured orcs innumerable. The men of the west were trapped and soon, all about the gray mounds where they stood. Forces 10 times and more than 10 times their march would ring them in a sea of enemies. Sauron had taken the prophet bait in jaws of steel. Little time was left to Aragorn for the ordering of his battle. Upon the one hill he stood with Gandalf, and there, fair and desperate, was raised the banner of the tree and stars. Upon the other hill, hard by stood the banners of Rohan and Dol Amroth. white horse, and silver swan. And about each hill a ring was made, facing always, bristling, with spear and sword. But in the front towards Mordor, when the first bitter assault would come, there stood the sons of Elrond on the left, with the Dúnedain about them, and on the right the Prince Amrahiel, with the men of Dol Amroth, tall and fair, and picked men of the Tower of Guards. The wind blew, and the trumpets sang, and arrows whined, but the sun, now climbing towards the south, was veiled in the reeks of Mordor, and through a threatening haze and gleam remote, a sullen red, as if it were the ending of the day, or the end, maybe, of all the world of lights and of the gathering. Mark the Nazgul came with their cold voices, crying words of death, and then all hope was quenched. Pippin had bowed, crushed with horror, when he heard Gandalf reject the terms and doom Frodo to the torment of the tower. But he had mastered himself, and now he stood beside Baragog in the front rank of Gondor with Imrahil's men, for it seemed best to him to die soon and leave the bitter story of his life, since all was in ruin. I wish Mary was here, he heard her saying, and quick thoughts raced through his mind, even as he watched the enemy come charging to the assault. Well, now at any rate I understand poor Denethor a little better. We might die together, Mary and I, and since die we must, why not? Well, as he is not here, I hope he'll find an easier end. But now I must do my best. He drew his sword and looked at it, and the intertwining shapes of red and gold, and the flowing characters of Numenor glinted like fire upon the blade. This was made for such an hour, he thought. If only I could smite that foul messenger with it, then almost I should draw level with old Mary. Well, I'll smite some of this beastly brood before the end. I wish I could see cool sunlight and green grass again. Then, even as he thought these things, the first assault crashed into them. The orcs hindered by the miners that lay before the hills, halted and poured these arrows into the defending ranks. But through them, there came striding up, roaring like beasts, a company of hill trolls out of Gorgoroth, taller and broader than men they were, and they were clad only in close-fitting mesh of horny scales, or maybe that was their hideous hide. But they bore round bucklers, huge and black. and wielded heavy hammers in their knotted hands. Reckless, they sprang into the pools and waded across, bellowing as they came. Like a storm, they broke upon the line of the land of corridor. And beat upon the helm and head, and arm and shield. As smiths hewing the hot bending iron. At Pippin's side, Beregond was stunned and overborne, and he fell. And the great troll chief that smote him down bent over him, reaching out a clutching claw. For these fell creatures would bite the throats of those that they threw down. Then Pippin stabbed upwards, and the written blade of Wishtenice pierced through the hide and went deep into the vitals of the troll. And the black blood came gushing out. He toppled forward and came crashing down like a falling rock, burying those beneath him. Blackness and stench and crushing pain came upon Pippin, and his mind fell away into a great darkness. So it ends as he guessed it would. Well, his thought said, even as he fluttered away, and it laughed a little within him, ere it fled. Almost gay, it seemed to be casting off at last all doubt and care and fear. And then, even as it winged away into forgetfulness, it heard voices, and they seemed to be crying in some forgotten world far above. The eagles are coming! The eagles are coming! For one moment, more Pippin thought hovered. Bilbo, it said. But no. But that came in his tail long ago. This is my tale. And it is ended now. Goodbye. And his thought fled far away, and his eyes saw no more. Okay, next time we read it, we will be in book 6. We will start in chapter 1, The Tower of Cirith Ungol. I will post up the picture that is within that chapter so that you may be familiar with it before we read it. Okay, until next time, safe travels. Make sure whatever you do, you don't harm yourself or someone else when you're doing it. Take care. Laters.